kick off the recording and hand it over to Matt Hone at Esri, who's going to talk to us about communicating GIS value. Take it away, Matt.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy. Gotta accept here that it's being recorded. And thank you for that ERISA plug about ROI and recording documenting your return on investment. That is extremely critical to helping communicate the value of the work that you all do. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Looking good.
Good. All right, then I'm going to go ahead and kick us off and get started. So this presentation, I've added to it, expanded to it a little bit since CAM. It's kind of a continuing evolution of things, observations, best practices, just lessons learned that I come across in my work with Esri. But Amy, you had kind of spearheaded this, I guess, at CAM last year when you reached out with a couple of topics that CAM members had. It really kind of spawned me to put together this presentation. But all of those questions, topics were kind of around how to more effectively communicate GIS value to leadership. So some of this content I've taken from my 5 years of experience working with local governments at Esri, as well as my past 15 years of working in the GIS industry with federal, state, and with local governments as well. So yeah, looking forward to getting started. And I do want to caveat, even though I do work for Esri, there's an Esri logo here. This is everything that I've put together. This is all for me. This is all thoughts. This is observations that I've put together. And I do also want to caveat that there is no silver bullet or magic bullet. There is no Matt from Esri told me 3 magic GIS words, and now I'm so wonderful and eloquent that everybody's opening up their checkbooks and listening to what I have to say. Unfortunately, I don't have that capability. I surely wish I did. But there are lots of tips and tricks and tools that we can use to help more effectively communicate the work that we do. So I want to quickly go over why we're here, discuss some core concepts. What is this concept of determining value? Because before we communicate value, we have to determine what the value is that we want to communicate. How do we put together an effective strategy to engage with our stakeholders and leadership? And then how do we communicate value? And I like to put on my listening ears for that one. And then talk about the GIS patterns of use, and then how we can deploy all of this in a modern web GIS environment. So to kick things off, we don't have to do a show of hands or stand up. We're virtual, but who thinks of communicating value as maybe a code word for sales? And sometimes people think of sales as a 5-letter, 4-letter word. I did not get into GIS to help sell the things. I got into GIS and because of my passion and love for geography and location technology. And I want to do the things, not sell the things or communicate the things. But unfortunately, if we can't effectively communicate what it is we do and the value we add to the organization, we will quickly lose the ability to do the things that we love. So if you Google sales or salesman, or even communicating how to sell somebody or convince somebody, you get a lot of pictures like this guy from Matilda. Maybe a pencil thin mustache, maybe or most definitely a carpet that's been turned into, or a couch that's been turned into a sport coat. Probably not the best sales role model. Another example, when people think of sales, lots of times I think of this guy. Terrible sales role model. Stole millions of dollars, addicted to drugs, went to jail. Fantastic movie though. If you need a good laugh, then check out The Wolf of Wall Street. But what I do like, and speaking of sport coats and movies, is this meme that Chase Fisher from our office put together. If you haven't seen Tommy Boy, it's one of my favorites. I think I used to have it on video cassette tape. But Chris Farley and Tommy Boy, I think, gives us some good lessons. Be persistent. You're going to fail. I fail all the time. I think failure is in many ways a good thing if we can pick up our feet and take some lessons learned and get back to it. And then get creative. And I think perhaps most important is make people laugh. So I think Chris Farley did a fantastic job of that in Tommy Boy and the rest of his movies as well. But really, when I think of communicating value, I think of it as this: understanding, listening, taking a bunch of gobbled up squiggly lines, processing it in our heads with our unique and valuable skill sets, and turning it into something usable on the other end. Ideally, that is a problem, and a problem that has gone unmet and has value to the other. So with that, has anyone seen this slide before? Or some sort of iteration of the slide? And we don't have to raise hands because we're in a virtual space. But if you've seen an Esri presentation or one of my presentations, chances are you have seen some sort of iteration of this. At Esri, we developed our GIS. This is just what GIS does. These 9 patterns of use are everything that you as GIS system administrators and GIS managers have the capability to provide to your different departments across your organization. GIS is a comprehensive business system, mapping, visualization, of course, but data management, field mobility, monitoring, analytics, collaboration and sharing, constituent engagement, design and planning, and decision support. Your GIS may not be configured to provide these services, but it certainly can be. And as we talk about communicating value and looking at different places in our organization, nearly every department that we work with likely has not just one, but many of these capabilities that they provide. So they are using GIS or some sort of GIS substitute in some way across their daily business functions. All right, so this is the why we're here. These are the 3 questions that you shared, Amy. How do I convince decision makers to invest in GIS? How do I showcase GIS to get others excited about its possibilities? And how do I pitch an idea or a solution to a department in a way that will convince them to try it? So right off the bat, the first one, how do I convince decision makers to invest in GIS? I think before we do that, we got to figure out who is the decision maker. Is it your boss? Is it the GIS manager, IT director, public works director? Is it the board, the CIO? But what are their drivers? What do they need? And again, to Amy, to your point about the ERISA webinar, what return on investment, not just is most important, but what will resonate with them? It's not always, return on investment is not always money. In many instances, it could be saving time. Cost avoidance. I mean, are you building out workflows that are going to provide a greater return on preventative maintenance? Are GIS solutions going to prevent the city or county or even the state from potentially losing a lot of money in a water main break or some other cost avoidance return? Things like increasing accuracy, making things better and easier to use across the organization, improving productivity. Are we introducing automations or modernizations that help the public works director do more with less staff? That could probably be a big motivator for them. Rather than saving a lot of money, we may have a large budget, but we don't have the people to actually implement those capabilities. So let's introduce some modernizations and efficiencies so that we can do more with less. That in many instances is a bigger return than just an initial cost saving on a budget line. Automating workflows, managing resources. And then, how do you showcase GIS to get others excited about its possibilities? So with showcasing, there's always the art, there is the art of the possible, right? Let's show leadership, all the shiny objects, the bells and whistles, all the exciting flashing things. However, there is value to that in many ways. However, many times you will be more successful listening, identifying what the actual problem is, and then presenting a solution that fits their needs, not presenting all the things that maybe we as GIS managers want to do, or maybe all the things that we saw at the most recent Esri conference. but do that listening, do that discovery first, before we, showcase something. Also, how is GIS perceived in the organization? Is GIS in your organization within one department? And many times that could be the auditor's department or auditor. Excuse me, it's the appraiser's office. I was a few minutes ago on the phone with an auditor's office in Iowa, but we have the appraisers of their clerk's office in Kansas. So are you in that department? How is GIS perceived across the organization? Working with your IT department, do you have regular meetings with other department heads? Sometimes there can be a IT steering committee. You're making sure that every new workflow or new third-party solution or software makes it through the review of the IT director or their staff. One of the things I like to point people to is the Esri Solutions Gallery. All of these are configured solutions that you have the capabilities to deploy. And in many instances, if there is an IT steering committee or an IT review board, third-party solutions or different solutions that departments present to IT, they may not know it's a GIS problem, may not know it's a GIS solution. So figure out a way to get involved in those meetings if they exist. And then, of course, an internal GIS user group. So working, if you're a large organization within your own organization, different users in different departments. If you're part of a regional consortium, in Kansas, you have the MARC region. I know MARC does regional GIS user groups or work to establish your own GIS user group. And then, of course, here's the pitch. How do I pitch an idea or solution to a department in a way that will convince them to try it? And I think that convince is that's the sticker word there, right? Why are we trying to convince people they should just do this stuff? It's fantastic. But if we're trying to get people to make changes in their workflows, to adopt something new, what we really want to do is focus on the value, not the flash. Solving unmet needs, being patient, listening. And then this is, for me, this is the biggest one. And I think it's one that we sometimes overlook, and that is getting stakeholder buy-in. So I wanted to put up another movie reference here. How many of you all have had this experience? So I built this great app. I thought everybody wanted it, and then no one used it. Or they told me they wanted this, so I built it and I pushed it to our district line. I sent them an email and then nothing, crickets. If you build it, they will come. And in most instances, only works in 80s baseball movies. So a couple of core concepts that we'll go over. This concept of having customers. And when I say customers, I don't mean organizations that sell data or consult out to other communities. I mean, you as a GIS manager own a business. You serve others in your organization. They have needs that you solve with your unique and valuable skill sets. And if you solve them, or if you don't solve them, they will go someplace else. If there's a public works department that needs a sign inventory, they are inventorying signs somehow. They have to do that. If the appraiser's office is mapping parcels somehow, if they're not using you for that, they have to use it somehow. So because you have customers, it also means that you have competition. So I think that concept is really unique in GIS, in that we serve everybody in the organization, and knowing that if we're unable to solve a need, then that need will not just go unmet, but it will get resolved in another way. And that could be maintaining the status quo. That could be pen and paper. That could be another third party capability. But it's we don't want GIS capabilities to disappear from the purview of the GIS manager. So identifying your stakeholders. This could be different personas. Really, this could be an entire section. Who are the key personas for a GIS manager to engage with in an organization. But at the core, you have GIS, you have leadership, you have users, and you have the technologists. But everyone wants and needs something different. We don't want to give an executive a database. We want to get them a dashboard so they can get answers. But at the same time, we don't want to give a business analyst a story map because they need the raw data to derive their analysis. And many times to deliver those answers to the executives in their chain of command. We're going to talk a little bit about defining value. And I really like this concept of unique and valuable capabilities. Everything that you all do as GIS professionals, as GIS managers, is something that is unique and valuable to your organization. And those skill sets are something that you contain and that you own. In tune, we don't want something unique and valuable to go to waste. So this gets into the concept of low value work. So if you make, let's use the example of if you make one map for one person, that's a one-to-one product there. We're exchanging 1 hour of GIS professional time for 1 hour of end user time. If it could take them an hour, it could take you an hour potentially. So that's essentially exchanging our value for something that is not exponentially growing that value. Because no matter how important that data product was, it's something that potentially somebody else could have done. And then this concept of investing in yourself. Please invest in yourselves. Attend events, expand your knowledge base, do things exactly like you're all doing today. Attend lunch and learn sessions, attend, even outside of core GIS industry. I mean, don't tell anybody I said this, but user conference is fantastic, but there are also other industry conferences out there as well. If you're working more closely with the appraiser's office, the ERISA Valtech conference was just a couple weeks ago at Las Vegas. There's IAAO that's coming up. If you work with Public Works or Highway Department, APWA conference is a great way to go and expand your knowledge base, not just outside of GIS, but into more of a niche industry segment of GIS. And speaking of APWA, does anyone here support Public Works or Highway Department? Hope the answer is yes. This is a great example of knowing your personas. Your public work, get to know your public works director, your highway manager, your chief engineer. This screenshot here is from the APWA, American Public Works Association Reporter magazine. It comes out monthly. Your organization probably subscribes to it. It's probably sitting on a coffee table in the engineer's office. But every year they do a survey of the top 5 technology trends. They have 30,000 members across the country. They get the survey, and of the top 5 technology trends, that's what GIS. It is one of them, but it is critical to the function of all 5 of them. Asset management. You can't have asset management without location. Drones literally can't take off without GIS. Electric vehicles, routing and efficiency. Geographic informations. I've heard a few good things about it. Technology for field crews. Field mobility is we've been saying for the last, 10 years, field mobility is growing. But even more and more, we talk about this concept of turning a workflow into data. Your field crews in Public Works, they're already plowing, they're already mowing, they're already grading, they're already exercising valves, filling potholes, and a whole bunch of other stuff as well. But each one of those tasks that everyone in Public Works does out in the field every day has a location and an attribute, or many attributes associated to it. I use this equipment in this location to take this action because of this need. If we can record all of this when they're conducting their normal day-to-day functions, you can have dashboards, system of record, you can have analysis, you can enable a world of possibilities, all with GIS with a simple mobile device. That's a huge return on investment because you're not asking anyone to do anything, any new workflows or any new tasking. Mow as you normally would, just hit a button on your phone when you're done. All right. So determining GIS value. So before we can effectively communicate the value, we have to define what it is we need to communicate. So how do we focus our work on assisting the business of our organization? I think first we need to identify what the business goals are. In many instances, these are documented: a strategic plan, mayoral initiative. If you have county council, or county manager's mission statement. But these are all documented. And if you're working with different departments, you'll get a better understanding of their business goals and objectives, not just what it is they think they want to do with maps of GIS. Once we know business goals, we can identify what the challenges they're facing. So I like to say if it's a goal, there must be some sort of challenge, because if there wasn't a challenge, it would just be completed, right? So for something to be a goal, you must have a challenge, a reason that we haven't already accomplished it. What is keeping them from accomplishing these goals? This is talking to departments, talking to users, really working to understand challenges. And this really gets into that, listening, observing, putting in the legwork ahead of time, not just jumping straight into pushing out an application or workflow. And then of course, stakeholder buy-in, a business-driven GIS solution. So once you identify the goal, you know what the challenge is, and then you look to solve it, you can help them invest in your solution. And then of course, you've established what the business value is, right? Because that results in a solution that solved a known challenge that is for a set goal or objective. So whatever that value of that goal is that you solve with GIS is then your business value of your GIS solution or workflow. Simple, right? Just a bunch of little circles and arrows. But it is a process, and I think for many of us, myself included, a shift in mindset. So once we move on from determining the value that we want to work in a project, then how do we effectively develop and execute a strategy and a geospatial strategy? So we often present this. I think some of you on the line may have Advantage programs, or you may work with your Esri account team. This is a pretty standard project management workflow, but we also use it when we're communicating about how our technical advisors through our Advantage program work with many of our customers. So the first step is understanding. So what does define success? What does that look like? If it's the public works director, what's their vision? What do they want the outcome to look like? And these things should be SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. As soon as possible, or whenever we'll get to it. Don't fly. Let's make sure we put a timeline on it, because that will help drive us. And then of course, make sure you get that executive backing. Not building something from a user, but making sure that we work with leadership to make sure we get the support, because going back to the field of dreams, leadership is going to make sure if this does solve the business value, that those users are going to implement it. Then we need a plan. We need to identify who are the people, what is the process, do we have the technology, and do we have the data that are necessary to implement this workflow. And then of course, we got to do it. Once we put in all the legwork, once we build the plan, we got to actually implement. And then once we're finished preparing, implementing, operating, and reviewing, we go back and make sure we're still understanding. We revisit and start from the beginning and make sure that this is a cadence of process to fully understand. From some of my observations and some of my personal and professional experience, I think a lot of us get stuck in two places. One is the first is the fanning phase, the planning phase. I don't know, we as technology people, we get excited, right? We wrap our heads around the actual, making sure everything is planned out. We want it to be perfect. We plan, we hold meetings, we make sure the data is perfect. We make sure that this, survey 1, 2, 3 is exactly the case. It's not going to trip anybody up. Or we make the workflow so complex. We listen to everything and get every little detail. We make it so complex that everyone loses interest. That's an area that's a pitfall. And then I also think that many of us probably don't plan enough. We go right to the doing. We get excited. All right, fine. We listened to what they wanted. We had a meeting, and then we didn't put together a plan. We didn't identify the right people to process. We didn't identify the right technology. We just go straight to doing it. How many people have done that? I have. Actually, I turned my camera off. I'm raising my hand. But yeah, right after that discovery meeting, we immediately go back to the computer and start plugging away and putting together a solution, because we get excited about it. That's totally normal. But we still have to put together that plan and make sure we have everything together. That's also where we don't identify the right people, and we fall back into the field of dreams pitfall, the not identifying the right stakeholders and getting the buy-in. All right, so GIS professionals, you all on the phone, your coworkers, your peers, GIS managers, central and critical to supporting the core WebGIS framework that support other user roles in an organization. The role of GIS professionals is shifting. As I kind of alluded to earlier, my job is just to create the map, or people come to me for questions and I answer questions one-off. That's in many instances no longer the role of a GIS professional. Not only are we building out the processes and the workflows, but we're also curating the content, and not just enabling a few set of users, but enabling everyone in the entire organization. If we go back to those 9 patterns of use, the entire organization can benefit from the business system that you all administer. That might be your magic bullet right there. And then, of course, this is what a modern WebGIS architecture looks like. But of course, you need that WebGIS. That WebGIS is the platform, the way that everyone can engage with it. You're not going to get everybody to come back to their desktop every time they need to fill out a survey 1, 2, 3. They want to do it on their phone and connect to your authoritative data and content over the web. So getting back to summarizing communicating value. Know what your customer personas need, but what do they really need? They might say they need a map, but why do they need a map? What's behind that? What's behind that? Ask questions. Listen. Are there needs that are gone unmet? Is there something that's been nagging the director for so long and he hasn't had a solution to it? That's right there an area to focus on. Establish that cadence of engagement, that cycle, that understanding. Understanding doesn't only happen once. Understanding is a continual process. Same with plans. Plans are fantastic, but plans are designed to be updated. Make sure you get that buy-in. Identify your stakeholders and get that buy-in from users that can help, users or personas that can help drive your process. And then focus on value, not necessarily cost, because in many instances the return on investment may not be a dollar number. It may be many other things. And a way to quickly identify that is, what is the alternative? If we don't invest in a GIS solution, what is the true cost of this not taking action? Is it pen and paper? Is it true cost recovery? And with that, I do want to open things up for questions. I can go back I can move around. I know I went through a lot of material very quickly. So I'd be more than happy to answer questions or go back to any slides as necessary.
So if you have questions, you can put those in the chat. Matt, I'm going to kind of kick it off a little bit. You know, you've talked a lot about having those listening sessions where you're talking to people and trying to understand what are their needs and what do they really need. Do you have advice for people on how to initiate those conversations? Like how to get your foot in the door when everybody's busy just doing that day-to-day work? How do you start that conversation and kind of get that going?
Ask that. I think that's the best. You know, Amy, I really like what you said, but I'd like the opportunity to better understand what it is you're saying. Do you have a couple minutes we could go sit down and talk about that? I think that's a great way. Just maybe even a sidebar. It could be a water cooler conversation. Now that we're back in the office, or you know, a quick Teams call or team chat. But everyone appreciates being asked. No one likes it when you just immediately solve all their problems when they didn't even know they had problems. I think it was is Drew on? Let's scroll through the chat here, but when we did this at camp, I picked on Drew a little bit because he was in the front row. I went up to Drew and I said, Drew, what would you say if I came up to you and I said, Drew, I've got the answer to all your problems. You know, I know there's a lot of things going wrong in your life, but I got it right here. I got it all figured out. I can do it. You kick me out the door, right? So we really do need to spend the time to ask questions and to meet with people. Really ideally in face-to-face, or over a Zoom call when you can at least read somebody's facial reactions to what you're communicating.
And these conversations, this isn't, like you said, it's not a magic bullet, right? It's not going to all happen in one conversation that you get your buy-in and your executive sponsorship.
Exactly. And Amy, that's a fantastic point. You know, you don't have to even label the conference. You don't have to hold up a sign. Hey, this is our understanding meeting. It's just a meeting where you walk away with an understanding. You know, a lot of it's almost just kind of being human, being relatable, making sure you're understanding completely what it is people truly need.
So Matt, when Esri's invited in to a new organization to do, you know, to do your sales pitch, do you have questions that you like to ask people? Are there specific people that you want to make sure you meet with when you've got that limited amount of time? What's your strategy?
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, when the sales pitch is such a terrible phrase, because you can always show the shiny objects, right? But I really think that people can get the shiny objects anywhere. If you really just want to see what flashes, you can watch a webinar. You can go watch a YouTube video, or if you want an Esri, you can go to our media space site. I really I think the most effective engagements are the ones where I or our team speak the least. Just ask, what is, I mean, even open questions like, oh, why is that? Or how is that working for you? I mean, it doesn't have to be technical or complex. It's really just getting people to talk about the current workflow and what the challenges are with that. And then, we as GIS professionals, of course, we do have the technical questions, right? Like, do you have devices, or do you have, what type of software experience, or how are your, will your users be able to interact with the solution that I've put together? But for the most part, I think just listening and having a setting where people feel that they can contribute and communicate what their challenges are. Because it's, if you have a challenge, it can be awkward to talk about it. It's almost, even if you're with a coworker in a safe space, nobody likes to admit their challenges or their problems.
What about people that don't feel like they're the GIS technical expert and they know every possible solution to every possible problem? Like, what advice would you give to those that are intimidated, that they don't want to walk into a meeting and be like, well, I don't really know if GIS can do that? How do you overcome the imposter syndrome?
Oh man, that's Amy, that's a good one. And imposter syndrome is such a good word, or a good phrase. Because it's totally, I mean, if you are the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So take notes. I mean, there's a plethora of resources out there for them. And we talk about digital transformations. I use a notepad every day. Anybody who has seen me in a meeting, I usually do not have the answers, but I know how to find someone who does have the right answer or the right resource. I can find a web source where you can just Google it. So there's always a way to find an answer that is going to fit somebody. And then you can always reach out to your Esri accountant too. They're always more than happy to help you find a resource.
And certainly your CAM community as well.
Yes,
If you're looking for a solution, we want to help you find somebody who's been there, done that.
Yes, absolutely. Amy, that's a very good point. I mean, that's everybody on the call knows the value of the community because you're involved in it right now. But yeah, encourage others to participate in user communities. I mean, that's where we get the greatest pool of knowledge, is when we all provide feedback and contribute to each other.
All right, next question. What advice would you give to customers that do not see that they have a problem while with still using paper maps and sticky notes to manage their department? So, for example, a public works department that loves their paper maps. How do you tell them that this is a problem when they don't think they have a problem?
Yeah, that is a challenge, because nobody likes to hear that they have a problem, especially from someone that doesn't work in their department or report to them. In many instances, if there is not a recognition of the problem, it's going to take a longer time you'll get a much better return by investing time and encouraging them and supporting them. But it has to be their decision to make a change. And so that's where it can be a challenge. But that's also where there's other events and resources too. I mean, bring your public works director to a luncheon board, or bring them to a CAM event, or encourage them to attend PWX, or connect them with reach out to your community and identify another CAM member or someone in the GIS profession that's had success with that, or share a success story with them. So you kind of have to plant those seeds, I guess. Again, usually it's not a magic bullet conversation to convince somebody they need to make a significant change.
And kind of dovetailing on this, I like this question. If you have a department head that just won't return your messages, should you skip them and go for the low-hanging fruit in other departments, or is there another approach?
So an extremely effective strategy is to tackle that low-hanging fruit first. Sometimes that is what's necessary. If you invest all your time in one instance, there may be a larger return over the long term, but those quick wins can really help you develop that clout within your organization. I think a lot of times, I know that some of the GIS managers on the phone, you provide one solution to one department, and they realize, they share that with other groups, or they share that with other workflows in the organization. Most of these GIS workflows are very repeatable as well. If you put something together for collecting sign inventory, you could also put a very similar workflow together for damage assessment, or collecting any other data in the field. So sometimes these things do have the ability to snowball. You got to identify what that low-hanging fruit is first.
That's great. Anybody else have any other questions for Matt? We're still waiting for that magic bullet. The magic 3 words that you say that everyone goes, oh, GIS. It's a process, right? It's a long conversation. You got to play the long game.
You really do. And I mean, be patient. And going back to Chris Farley, acknowledge and accept that you're going to fail. Like what you think is low hanging fruit might turn out to be, a big kerfuffle and fall apart. Do it again. And then I don't know, be human, be relatable, make people laugh, and engage the way people want to be engaged with. Remember, if you're building a workflow for them, it's about them, not about you.
All right, I'm not seeing more questions, so I'll do a couple of quick wrap up items by throwing some more stuff in the chat. But if you still have questions, please ask those. First up, our next Lunch and Learn webinar is in May 17th to be exact. We'll be joined by Scott Perkins from Prairie Engineers, my apologies. Should be a really interesting presentation on how they responded to, let me get this up and sharing, there we go. How they responded to Hurricane Fiona. So, tornadoes definitely are concerns. Hurricanes, a big, long, sustained tornado. I'm sure there are lessons to be learned with that. But kansasmappers.org/lunch and learn, that's in the chat. Please join us for that in May. And then we've got certainly more coming up, so definitely browse that. Also, reminder, we just announced this class, GIS return on investment. Great way to get that executive buy-in. If you can document, hey, here's how we're using GIS and we're saving you time and we're making things more efficient and we're doing more with less. Join us for that as well. And last but certainly not least, save the date, October 24th to 27th. Come join us in Wichita to be all in on GIS. And we're there to network and share good information, and there'll be lots of great classes. Still plan on that right now. So with that, I've lost my chat. There it is. If there are no other questions, thank you, Matt, for your time and your expertise.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for having me. Cam is a fantastic group, and Amy, I really appreciate you moderating and setting this up.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.